Today is August 13th, 2006. I am Sarah Locker. It is a pleasure to conduct this interview for the Dakota Memories Oral History Project in Lyla, North Dakota. Can you state your full name, including your maiden name?
Lyla Presler Johnson.
And when and where were you born?
Well, I was born in Eureka at my grandmother's house, but we lived in Hosmer, South Dakota, and I was just there, being born, I guess.
Did you ever hear any stories about your birth?
Not really, no.
Do you know if you were born, if you were delivered by a midwife?
Midwife. No, I take it back. We had a doctor in Eureka, that's why my mom went to Eureka, right.
Oh. What is your earliest memory that you can recall?
I can remember living in Hosmer, South Dakota up until I was in the second grade. And my father died when I was just 5 years old, so my mom was left with 3 kids and one on the way.
Wow. Do you have memories of your dad still?
Oh, yes, I really do, you bet, yeah.
What memories do you have of him?
Well, we had a second story to our house, and my dad and his dad owned a hardware store in Hosmer, and our own hardware. And he would bring home these big cardboard ads, and they were upstairs, and we would hide behind them when my dad came home, and he would have to find us before he could have lunch or supper. Oh, yeah, I remember. And then I also remember I was great at running away from home, and I would go downtown to where my dad's hardware store was, and that was a no-no, and one day he took me back in what they called a tin shop. He really paddled my behind. I didn't try that again. But I remember that very well.
Wow. So, were you just raised by your mother then, or
Mm-hmm.
did she later remarry at all?
No, not until we were all grown, yeah. I had 2 brothers and have a sister. My youngest brother was killed in World War II, but my other brother lives in California, as does my sister, yeah.
Wow.
So
What was that like, having your mom be the...
Well, my aunt and uncle lived right next door to us, so my uncle, her brother, kind of played the part of dad a lot, yeah, right.
Stepped in to help out. Did she have to work outside the family?
Yes, she did, and my grandmother took care of us, yeah. She worked she was a baker in a restaurant. And then later on when, what was this? The school lunch programs came out, and then she was a cook at the school. But she had to work, yeah. And then after we were all grown up, she married and they moved to California, so.
Wow. Which grandmother raised you?
My mother's mother, Grandma Kelly. Mm-hmm.
Do you know when she was born or where she was born?
Oh, she was born in Russia. Klikstal, Russia, I believe it was. But I don't know when. She was 65 or 67 when she died. I'm not even sure. I was 13 at the time, so.
What do you remember of your grandmother?
Oh, she was a doll. She was tough, but I know on New Year's Eve at midnight, our church bells rang and the siren blew, and she always got up and read the Bible. And I would always get up with her. I don't know what she read. It was in German, and I don't know what book it was from or anything, but I would always get up with her. And I can remember my grandparents had a little chicken yard, and of course she would take a dozen eggs downtown. I would walk with her. She carried the basket. I just trailed along. But I had a good life.
Did she ever share any stories about Russia or her trip to the U.S.?
I'm sure she did, but sometimes she had some funny stories to tell, but I can't even remember those. It was something about a cemetery and something showing up in the cemetery unexpectedly and scaring him half to death. But Oh, and then she did talk about her brother was killed in it was a Russian war. I don't remember which one, but his name was Lawrence Kessler. And I remember her telling when some of their friends gathered, they would talk about these things, and she told about how when her brother was shot, they were sitting at the kitchen table with a kerosene lamp, and the lamp just exploded. And then later they found it was about the time that her brother was killed, yeah. I thought it still makes my hair stand on end.
Wow.
But that's what they thought. So,
Do you know how big of a family she came from? How many brothers and sisters she had?
let's see. I know she had one brother that I got to know. He came to this country about the same time. He lived in Akaska, South Dakota. And his name was what? Jacob Kessler? I'm not even sure. No, I don't remember his first name. Lawrence Kessler. And let's see. I just know of the one that was in about 50 miles south of Eureka. That's where he lived, yeah.
Do you know how old she was when she came over?
Well, she was married, and my uncle, the youngest in the family of three, was born. He was just a baby when they came over to this country, yeah.
So your mother was also
She
born in
was 6,
Russia.
I think, yeah, when they came to America. And her sister was 9, I guess, yeah.
Did they ever talk about what memories they had of Russia?
No. I think they were too young. They didn't.
Yeah, that's pretty little.
Yeah, right.
Was your grandmother a religious person?
Yeah, Lutheran. My grandma and grandpa both.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, strong Lutherans, right. And my grandparents on the other side, my dad's side, were Reformed. Just as strong.
Did you get to know your grandparents on your dad's side?
Yes, I did. Mm-hmm.
What about your grandpa on your mother's side? What was he like?
Well, he had been very ill when he was a child, a small child, and so he lost his hearing, and they couldn't even fit him with a hearing aid for some reason. But we lived with them for a good many years, yeah. They were kind enough to take us in.
So after your dad died, your whole
Mm-hmm.
family
Right,
moved there?
yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yes.
You have to have probably a lot of memories of your mother. What
Oh,
was she
yes.
like?
Oh, yeah. She was a hard worker, yeah. And a stickler for perfection. We could never clean anything good enough to please her. After we were through dusting, she would go like this, and, oh, that used to bug me. But she was okay.
What was your relationship like with her?
Good. Of course, we had our arguments. Teenage girls and mothers, they always have their arguments. But no, we got along fine.
What do you have a fond memory of your mother? Or a more
Let
favorite
me
memory?
think. I just can't think of anything, but I know we were friends. There were times when we weren't so friendly, but as a rule, it was good. And then my sister, I had a sister and 2 brothers. We all got along fine after we got older. But my sister was so stubborn. Oh,
Can you give me an example of a story where she was
mm.
being stubborn?
Let's see. She came home so late one night and my mom had locked the door. And of course she paddled her, and my sister wouldn't shed a tear. She absolutely was stoic. She never shed a tear. And I was bawling all the time.
Was this sister older? Or
No,
younger?
I'm the oldest in the
You're
family, yeah.
Okay.
Then was my brother, one of my brothers, and my youngest brother was the one that was killed in World War II, yeah.
Okay.
My sister and brother still live in California, yeah, in Sacramento.
Did they move with your mother and stepmother?
No, after they were grown. And well, my brother stayed in California after he came back out of the war, out of the service. And my sister married and they moved out there, yeah.
Okay.
They had lived in Montana before and then they moved to California.
How did your mother express her emotions? Yeah, if you did something good, would she tell you you did a good job?
No, she was more apt to tell us if we did something bad. I think that was the way of things at that time. People didn't believe in praising their kids, but I know when I had good grades in school, she was proud of that. But
Do you know where your father was born at?
he was born in South Dakota at Parkston, South Dakota.
Did his parents immigrate over, or was he? Okay.
But they were from a different part of Russia, yeah. I don't know what part, but anyhow, they came over as young marrieds. I think, I'm not sure. I mean, I never knew too much about them. And being that my dad died so young, there wasn't much to learn either.
Did you keep in touch with those grandparents even?
Oh yeah, up until he died, yeah. In fact, my grandmother died in Wisconsin, in Sheboygan. Her daughter and family moved there, and then she moved with them. And she was 96 when she died, yeah. But my grandpa Presler was in his mid-60s. He died of cancer. And they owned a flour mill in Hosmer, and you know, they worked without masks or anything. They inhaled all that dust. And so he was only, what, 65, I think, or 66, maybe 67 when he died, yeah. In fact, my Grandma Kelly was 67 also when she died. My grandpa lived to be almost 89. So we're kind of a long-lived family.
Really? How did your mother deal with hard times? You know, the 30s and when your dad passed away, money
Well, you
became
know, there
tight.
was no such thing as any kind of a social aid or anything, you know. You either lived off the county or, well, we didn't have to do that because my mom worked and we lived with my grandparents, so.
So there was no hardships during the 30s or anything like that?
Well, you know, we couldn't have a lot of things. Like everybody else, we grew up poor, sure. Oh, yeah.
Just kind of
And then
blended.
I did a lot of babysitting and for 10 cents an hour.
When did you start babysitting?
Oh, I was probably about 11. And then I babysat my cousins next door a lot. And there were 3 of them. So we were always, and then when I did have to babysit, when it was late at night, we just slept over there. And I should say, I just slept over there, yeah.
Do you know at all how your parents met?
Oh, my mom was working in Hosmer, living in Eureka. And she had a job as a housekeeper, I guess. And that's how she met my dad. I guess he and his dad and his brother owned this hardware store.
You've mentioned the order of your siblings. Can you tell me everybody's name?
Okay. My sister's name is Violet, and she was married to Ed Schuler. He died a number of years ago. And my brother's name is Leo, and he's still living in California. And the brother that died in the war, his name was Emo, same as my dad.
What did you think of all these younger brothers and sisters?
Oh, sometimes I hated them because I had to watch them. especially the boys. They were always getting into trouble.
What was the age difference between you and your
Let's see.
youngest brother?
Oh boy, I have to stop and think now. Maybe about 10, 12 years. Hmm.
What'd you think of the new baby brother when they...
Not much. I suppose I wanted a girl, but I wasn't asked. No, I remember my youngest brother. He was the cutest kid, though. Short and stubby and kind of red-headed and freckled. And my sister and I took care of my youngest brother. He was my favorite. And my sister took care of the other one, and he was her favorite. So sometimes twain didn't meet. But we got along fine, especially when we got older.
What kind of mischievous would the two younger ones get into?
Oh, my grandpa made homemade wine, and this was my youngest brother, and he would have a tin cup setting in the cabinet, and my youngest brother pulled a chair up there, and I guess he drank the wine, but he kept falling off of the chair, and finally my grandmother said, in German, he's got to be drunk. So they checked the tin cup, and it was empty. He was one sick little boy, but I think it taught him a lesson.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too, yeah.
Wow. Any other stories you remember of your siblings getting into trouble or doing something crazy?
Well, I guess a lot of things, but I just couldn't recall any right now. But I know one time my sister was making fudge, and for some reason or another, she put baking soda in the fudge as it was cooking, and of course it boiled all over. It was running all over the floor and everything. And I had to help clean it up. It was a mess. But I remember that. She loved to make fudge. I don't know where she got the idea to use baking soda in something that was boiling.
That'd create quite a mess.
Oh, it was.
Did any of you guys have nicknames?
Well, let's see. My youngest brother, his nickname was Ace.
How did you get that nickname?
I have no idea. And my older brother, I don't know. I don't think he had a nickname. I know my sister's middle name was Barbara. Oh, she hated to be called Barbara. And there were 5 Violets in her class in school, and the teachers wanted one of them to change their name to their middle name, and Vi wouldn't. And then, do you speak German?
No, I don't.
No. Well, anyhow, she would say Barbara. She said, they would just call me Beverly. So she never went by that.
Huh. Did you guys ever play together?
Oh, yeah, we played paper dolls and...
What other kinds of games would you play?
Oh, we played that. We were cooking. We had from my grandma and Grandpa Presler, we had gotten a cooking set, kettles, for Christmas, and we pretended we were cooking. And I remember one time I was going to make a cake. So I went out and I got some mud. It had rained. And I got eggs and everything and put everything in the mud and was going to bake them. That was not a happy day.
So how'd that cake turn out?
It never saw the oven, I'm afraid. Oh, yeah.
What kind of games would you play outside?
Oh, what is this? You play with 2 sticks and a ball. And goodness, I don't remember what it was. But we used to play that a lot. We'd have 2 sticks and then kind of an indentation where we'd put the ball, and then we would kick the ball or hit the ball out of there, and then whoever was on the other side was supposed to catch it, of course, and pum pum pull away, and
Where did you learn these games at?
Gosh, I don't know. I guess I knew them forever. A lot of them we did play in school. Drop the handkerchief and three deep, and
What's 3D?
three of you were standing like this, and then you had one person that was it, and he would run around the back and tag somebody, and then that person would have to catch the tagger.
Oh, okay.
But
Did your mother or your father ever teach you any games?
my mom tried to teach me bridge, but I was a poor student. I never did learn to play cards. But
Did she learn bridge over here, or did
oh
she
no,
learn
she
bridge?
learned that over here, yeah.
Okay.
And they used to have what they called bunco parties. They played it with dice and a cup, and then you'd shake the dice, and I don't know, there were prizes, but I don't ever remember. I never played it myself, but I know they had these bunco parties.
Wow. Did you have any actual toys to play with? You mentioned the paper dolls you would cut out. Did you have any other toys?
Oh yeah, we had dolls. hmm And of course, when we had company, they always wanted to play with the dolls, and I would always let them play with mine, and of course my doll got broken. My sister wouldn't let them touch hers, so she had her doll forever, I guess. But
What kind of company would you have come over and play?
oh, just neighbor kids, yeah.
Did you take turns playing at each other's houses?
Oh yes, oh sure.
Was there any kind of neighborhood field or park that kids played at?
Well, we had the city park that was up in the other end of town, but it had a high wall around it and lots of trees, but nothing else.
Did you have a favorite house you liked to play at?
Well, it seems to me like when we still lived in Hosmer, my mom's friend had a daughter. She was several years older than I, but she had every toy in the world you could think of, and of course I loved to play there. And I can remember she had a Japanese parasol, and I would wheel the doll carriage carrying the parasol. But in Hosmer, I don't remember too much. I remember going to school, and I know my first grade teacher's name was Mrs. Patterson. And then my second grade teacher was a Miss Doring, and she came to Eureka and taught. When I entered third grade, she started teaching third grade, so that was nice.
Did you like school?
Oh, I loved school, oh, yeah.
You went to school in town.
Yeah.
Did you know how to speak English when you started
Oh,
school?
yes, oh, yeah. My brothers didn't, I don't think, but I know I did.
What language did you speak at home?
German to my grandparents. My grandmother could understand English, but my grandpa, of course, couldn't hear, so he didn't understand much. Yeah, it was German.
Do you remember what month you started going to school each year?
September, right after Labor Day.
Okay. What time would school start for the day?
9.
And how long was your lunch break?
Well, an hour because we all went home. We didn't have hot lunch at that time yet. So we all went home for lunch. It was an hour, yeah.
Did you have any recesses in addition?
One in the morning and one in the afternoon, yeah.
And what time did you get done with school?
You mean,
For the day.
oh, for the day,
Yeah.
4 o'clock. 4 o'clock, right.
And then for the year?
Usually right around Memorial Day or right after Memorial Day or just before, but
And how many kids were in your school?
well, at that time it was a big school. It was a couple of hundred anyhow. I think in my class there were usually 28 or 30.
So you,
I know in my confirmation class there were 28 also, and we were all in the same grade. So
you didn't have to deal with any multiple grades in one class.
no, we never did.
Did you have students that weren't German Russian? Or classmates?
We had one classmate who was Jewish. Her parents owned a store, a grocery store in Eureka. But
Was she-
otherwise, oh well, I think there was one family. They were of Russian descent, pure Russian.
Were they ever treated differently?
Yeah.
Okay. What about kids who maybe came from a more well-to-do family?
Well, at that time, I think everybody was poor. You know, during the 30s, during the Depression, it really didn't seem to make any difference.
Did you have a favorite class in school?
Oh, I always liked reading, spelling. Geography wasn't bad. History, I preferred to geography. But my favorite class was reading and spelling, and mostly reading.
Were you encouraged to read at home?
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
You had books at home to read
Well,
also?
we went to the library every week, and
So was education important to your mother?
oh, yeah. Hmm. Being that she only went to the third grade, she thought it was very important, yeah.
Were you a good student?
I would say average. Hmm. Some classes were better than others.
What was a less or least favorite class?
Math. I still hate working with figures.
Did you have to help your siblings with homework as you got older?
The boys, yeah. But Vi was not that far behind me. She was only a year and a half younger than I, so.
Okay.
But they didn't appreciate the help. They didn't want to be bothered.
A little independent.
Right. They would rather have been playing on the floor with some toys.
Mm-hmm.
But
Do you have a favorite memory from grade school?
I don't know if you'd call this favorite, but one time I was in the third grade and we still had the old school 2 stories. And around the door of my third grade classroom, somebody had written something and said, Lyla Presler did this. And I didn't do it, and oh, I tried so hard. But I had to wash it off, and I never did find out who did it. But my teacher was very sympathetic, but I still had to wash it off. So that didn't help any.
Did she think you had done it?
I don't think so, huh?
Okay. Did you have a favorite teacher in grade school?
My third grade teacher, Miss Doring, yeah. And then I had Miss Gerke in the 5th grade, and I had a lot of favorite teachers.
That's always a nice thing.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys have any kind of parties to celebrate Halloween or Christmas?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What would those be like?
Well, like for Halloween, we would have a peanut shower, and each one would bring a small bag of peanuts and then shower the teacher with them. When she went out of the room and came back, we'd shower the peanuts at her, you know. Of course, we got to eat them. And then we'd have, like for St. Valentine's Day, there was always somebody would bring a cake or something. And
Sure. Did you have a Christmas program at all?
oh, yeah. Well, the whole school did, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What would each grade do?
Oh, we'd sing, and one time when we were in the, I'm not sure whether it was, yeah, it must have been 5th grade because we had a lady teacher. We girls had, we did a hoop dance. We had barrel hoops, you know, and we wrapped them in fancy crepe paper, and then the teacher would play some music, and we would, you know, do like this and all that kind of stuff. But it was fun.
Did
And
you? Oh, go ahead.
in YCL on Friday afternoons, we usually had a little program. We would just read our parts, you know. And I'll never forget this one boy. He was, what in the world? Now I forgot. Anyhow, he pronounced the words so different. We just burst out laughing. It was, I can't remember what the word was, but something that was easy to mispronounce and getting old.
What's YCL?
Young Citizens League.
And
Mm-hmm.
what'd you do?
It was mostly government. I mean, there was a class, you know, and in the spring we would always go to our county seat and we'd have contests like spelling contests, and that was all YCL connected, yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Did you want to go on to high school?
Oh, yes.
Were you able to go on to high school?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you have country kids in high
Yes,
school?
we did, and they came into town on Sunday nights, and they stayed until Friday evenings. They boarded at different places in town. Hmm.
What did you think of the country kids?
Oh, yes, thought they were great. We never knew any difference. I mean,
Nobody treated them differently.
no, huh?
Uh-huh. Let's go back to your home a little bit. Tell us about the chores you did as a child.
House cleaning, of course.
Since your mom worked, did you
Hmm.
do most of it, or did you kids do
We,
most of
yeah,
it?
my brother's job was to wash off the kitchen chairs every Saturday morning, and my sister and I did the dusting, and of course, then there were always the dishes, and we would try and get out of that as often as possible. And when my grandmother still lived, she would sometimes couldn't wait for us to get at them, so she would do them, and didn't sit very well with my mother. But those were good times. Hmm.
Doing the laundry?
Well, no, that we never. But ironing, oh, and my brothers wore at that time. Little boys wore white duck pants on Sundays, in the summer. They were the bugs to iron. Oh, they were hard to iron. And we girls had to do the ironing, yeah.
Who would do the actual laundry then?
My mom.
Okay.
Hmm.
How often would you have to do laundry?
Oh, once a week.
Okay.
Hmm.
Was there a set day for doing laundry?
Usually Monday, of course. And we did have an electric washing machine, but it was oblong and it was wood. And it had a wood dasher, and it would go up and down. But anyhow, we would have to be sure that there was water in it every day so that it wouldn't leak when you started pouring the wash water in. So,
Because the wood would expand.
yeah, right? Hmm.
Wow. That kind of be a pain.
Yeah, it was.
What chore did you hate doing the most?
Scrubbing floors. So I did everything else, and my sister did the scrubbing.
What chore didn't you mind doing?
Oh, gosh. At that age, I don't think you loved doing any of it. But I didn't mind dusting, and we had hardwood floors, and of course you had to, every morning before you went to school, you had to use a dust mop under the beds, and that was a chore to get it done before you went to school.
Did you have a lot of chores to do before you went to school?
That was about it. Mm-hmm. Of course, we always had to do the dishes. Even at noon when we came home for lunch, we had to do the dishes before we went back to school, so that wasn't a lot of fun either.
Was there a difference between winter chores and summer chores?
I don't think so. Never had to shovel snow or anything. I mean, that was my brother's job. And my grandpa did most of it.
Did the boys take care of the yard work as well?
Oh, no, Grandpa wouldn't allow that because it wasn't good enough. No. But one thing we did have to do in the fall when the county fair was running, it was usually 3 days, and we would have to, that was potato digging time, even though it was just a small patch, but we had to stay home and pick up potatoes. Remember that.
Did you plant anything else, or your grandmother plant anything else?
Oh, yeah, vegetables, just about everything.
Did
Corn, peas,
she
beets.
tend to the garden, or
No, my grandpa tended to the garden mostly, yeah.
okay.
He was the gardener, yeah.
Can you describe the homes you've grown up in? What they look like? Who would have slept where?
Well, I just grew up in that. When I was real little, when we lived in Hosmer, we had a big house, but I don't remember. I just remember the stairs, going upstairs. But We had a bungalow-type house with two bedrooms on the main floor and two bedrooms in the basement, and so.
Did you each get, well, would you each have, no, you guys each wouldn't have gotten your own room.
No, the boys slept down the basement in one room, and my sister and I and my mom, we had a big bedroom. And my sister and I shared a bed, and my mom had the other bed. But there were two beds in the bedroom, yeah.
And then Grandma and Grandpa got
They had their
another
other, yeah, their bedroom at the other end of the house, yeah.
Okay. And then the fourth bedroom was just a guest bedroom?
No, we didn't have a
Or just
fourth.
fourth room?
Mhm.
Okay.
Just the two bedrooms downstairs and the bedroom that my mom and sister and I slept in.
How did you guys keep warm in the winters?
Oh, we had a furnace, and my grandpa saw to it that it was well stoked every night and was warm when we got up in the morning. And
What about keeping the house cool in the summer?
we opened windows, and I remember we had one fan, but it would be hot. Humid. We had a lot of humidity at that time, it seemed like.
During the 30s?
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember about the dirty 30s and its impact on what things look like?
Well, it was very dry and dusty. And I remember sitting on the lawn on the west side of our house, east side of our house, looking up over the house toward the sun, and you could just see the grasshoppers moving in. Oh, it was just like a cloud.
Yuck.
And then another time we had just finished cleaning house, and a dust storm came up. Even though we had the windows closed, I can remember the dust was just thick on all the windowsills, and oh, it was a mess.
Now, when you say a dust storm kicked up, what would it have looked like if you looked out the window?
Oh, like a big cloud. Yeah, very dusty. Like you see when you see, well, when you see a tractor running or something, in a field, and then you can see the dust. It's about what it looked like.
So do you remember World War II beginning?
Oh, yeah, I sure do. I'll never forget that day. It was a Sunday when we heard about it. Well, when Japan attacked the USA, I was sitting by the radio listening to Sammy Kaye, and I was doing my nails too. And they announced this, that we had just been attacked at Pearl Harbor, and I know my mom was in the other room, and she ended up crying, and of course the boys were drafted, and well, I know they were not. They enlisted, which just about killed her. But that was a bad. I still remember that day so well.
How old were you?
Oh, well, I must have been about 20. This was in 1940, what? 41, 42, yeah. So I was 21.
And how old were your brothers that they were able to enlist?
Well, the older one was 19, and the younger one had just turned 18.
And they chose to go.
Yeah, right.
What impact did the war have on your daily life, on your personal life?
Well, there were the ration stamps, of course. You couldn't buy anything without ration stamps. And when I married and I moved to Georgia with my husband, I was so green. I went grocery shopping, and of course I bought the biggest of everything because that was the most economical. When I got to the checkout counter, of course I had to put everything back because I didn't have nearly enough stamps to cover the purchases. I remember one thing was Crisco, a 3-pound can of Crisco. Oh yeah, you needed ration stamps for everything. Gas and tires and
Anything you might need.
right, sugar.
Now, your two brothers enlisted.
Mm-hmm.
Did you worry about anybody else getting drafted?
Well, a lot of my cousins did, but we were never that close. They lived in different parts of the country and didn't really know.
Did you keep up, or were you able to keep up on what was happening with the war?
Pretty much, especially if you went to the movies, they had these newsreels, and you could get a pretty good picture. And we, of course, we were always looking to see if we recognized anyone, you know. But, of course, a lot of my classmates were all drafted, and several died.
Do you remember listening to what was happening with the war over the radio at all?
Oh my, yes, yeah.
And getting the updates?
Yeah, right.
How about
Scary.
how about the end of the war? Do you remember?
Yeah. It was in August. I don't remember the exact date. And I think this was when the war with the Japs ended. Because the European war, I think, ended early in the spring. And this was in August. And we were invited to a chicken dinner. Some of us girls that were war widows, or we got together at one of my friend's house for a chicken dinner that night. And I remember she she made gravy with peanut butter, and it was just delicious. I wouldn't try it myself, but it was good. It was a happy time and a sad time because a lot of the boys had been killed, and Eureka especially had a lot of war fatalities.
Did you hear about it over the radio that it had ended?
Yep.
You used the term war widow. Did your husband get drafted as well?
No.
Or?
Yeah, he was drafted.
Okay.
That was before we were married, though, yeah. We were married while he was in the service, yeah.
And he did go over to Europe to serve?
Oh, yeah,
While you were married?
Well, our oldest son was just 6 weeks old when he went overseas, yeah.
Did you get letters from your brothers and from your husband about what was happening?
Well, not what was happening, no, just got letters. My brothers would write to my mom, you know, but we didn't correspond. Through my mom, we did.
Switching gears a little. Since your mom since she worked in a bakery, did she also cook the meals at home?
No, she didn't work in a bakery. She worked in a restaurant and did the baking at the restaurant, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, she cooked most of the meals when my grandma wasn't able to or wasn't there anymore, yeah.
What kind of meals would usually be prepared?
Lots of German meals. I know my favorite to this day is still strudels, and I do cook them occasionally. But, Knäfle soup and halupsi, that's a German-Russian dish, I think. That's
What's
with
in that
cabbage
one?
roll.
Okay. Did your little brothers help at all in the kitchen?
Oh, no.
Did you and your sister cook meals?
When
at
we
all?
had, well, we helped when we had to, but
She still did most of the cooking.
my mom still most of the cooking, yeah.
Did you guys make your own ice cream?
Not really. My aunt and uncle next door did, but we had a hard time getting cream, you know. But I remember buying milk for 10 cents a quart, and we had a milkman that would bring it in bottles, of course.
Did your family do any of its own canning at all?
Oh, my goodness, yes. I think we cooked 1,000 quarts of jelly every year. We had choke cherries and crab apples. And, of course, there was plain choke cherry, and then there was choke cherry apple, and then there was apple jelly, and then there was apple jam. And oh, yeah, I hated those days.
How come?
Well, it was always our job to watch the kettle on the stove, you know. And I always had a book in one hand, and it ended up pretty badly sometimes. Cleaned a lot of messes.
Would you can anything other than jellies?
Oh, yeah. Peaches, pears, grapes. And then my mom would even make fruit cocktail and can it, you know. all the different fruits together, and of course green beans and peas we never canned because they were too finicky, I guess. But green beans and carrots and
Do you still can now?
heavens no. In fact, I don't even have a canner anymore. I gave it to my daughter-in-law years ago, and I don't think she cans anymore either.
What was your family's attitude towards alcohol?
Well, not very good. Although my grandpa liked his wine. I mean, he made homemade wine, but it was the ugliest stuff. He was so tight. He wouldn't use enough sugar, and
Be a little sour then?
oh,
Or?
it was terrible, I guess, yeah. But when we had colds or something, he would heat that, and we would have to drink a little of that hot wine. Oh, not a good choice.
Did it help?
I don't know. I never drank enough of it. Just smelling it was enough. It was terrible.
Do you think alcoholism was a problem in the neighborhood, in the town you grew up in?
Well, we had one town drunk, of course. Every town has that, I guess, but otherwise, I don't know, no.
What types of clothing would you wear when you were a child?
Well, a lot of skirts and sweaters, and that's about it, I guess. And we, we never had a lot of clothes, so my sister and I would share with each other, and so we each had something different to wear now and then. And you had one dress for Sunday, and heaven help you if you wore it other days.
Were they homemade or store-bought clothes?
Mostly homemade. My mother had a friend that did a lot of sewing for her, yeah, for us.
What about your little brothers? What would they wear?
Oh, pants, and always wore shirts and little bow ties.
Would those have to be bought? Or could
Oh,
they?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think they ever made any. Us girls, we're the ones that got the homemade dresses. But they weren't that bad. They were.
Did a lot of girls have homemade clothes?
Oh, most of them. Mm-hmm.
To kind of blend it in with everybody.
Right. And we all had hand-me-down coats. I know I used to get coats from my cousin who was several years older, and sometimes a dress. In fact, my confirmation dress was a hand-me-down from my cousin.
How often would you get new shoes?
Only when we needed them.
It was too hard to get them, or they were just too expensive?
Well, they weren't that expensive, but money was very scarce. Like you could buy a pair of shoes for $1.98, but
$2 could go a long way.
oh yeah, right. And I know when I worked in the drugstore for 6 years, and then of course I bought my own clothes. And even then, shoes were like $6.98. Of course, when you only got 50 cents an hour, it took a lot to buy a pair of shoes, yeah.
Took a couple more hours.
Mm-hmm.
Did your house in town always have electricity?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Did you guys always have a radio?
As long as I could remember, yeah.
Do you remember listening to the radio?
Oh, yeah. Oh, goodness. Little Orphan Annie. And, Amos and Andy, of course. Jack Benny. Oh, sure.
Did you have to worry about the battery?
No, it was electric.
Oh, okay.
We had electricity, yeah.
Oh, that's really helpful. That's handy.
Yeah?
Do you remember the first car or truck that your family got?
Well, we never had a car after my dad died. And that was a Buick Touring, a big, the top would collapse. You could fold it down, and it was a big car, yeah.
Do you know what year about that car
Oh,
was?
goodness, no.
Okay.
I was 5 when my dad died, and
Yeah.
after that we didn't have a car, yeah.
Over break, you were telling us a couple stories about clothing when you were a kid.
Hmm.
Could you tell us those again? The
About
Sunday.
my navy blue dress that I
Yes.
wore on the swing and tore half of the bottom half right off. I mean, right about by the waist, you know.
This was your Sunday dress you weren't
That
supposed
was
to wear
my
to school.
Sunday best. I wasn't supposed to wear it. Yeah, right.
What did your mom have to say about it?
Oh, I'm sure it was a lot, but I don't remember. Oh, yeah.
If you got in trouble, what was a typical punishment that you would get?
A paddling with a fly swatter.
Wow. You were also telling us a story about in the winter having to wear long
Long
underwear.
underwear. Oh, yeah.
And what did you do?
I went in the closet and I cut the legs off and went to school with just my cotton stockings. And it was cold, but
Was it uncomfortable wearing the long underwear with
oh,
the stockings over it?
yes, yes. And you know, you could never get them smooth. You could always see the folds and. Oh, yeah. Well, I remember we weren't even allowed to wear what was at that time silk stockings. I suppose they were rayon. But when I was in high school, we were not allowed to wear rayon stockings. We had to wear cotton stockings.
They were considered
Well, everybody could
inappropriate,
afford
or-
the cotton stockings, I guess, where the rayon stocking, even though they were only 49 cents a pair, I think, but I'm sure we saved our nickels for that.
How long were skirts or dresses?
Oh, below the knee. Yeah, they weren't terribly long, huh? When I was in high school, they were a bit longer. They were about halfway between the ankle and the knee, yeah.
How big was the town you grew up in?
1,500.
Can you describe it? Can you describe the town?
Typical small town. Oh, we did have a Lutheran college for a few years. In fact, my uncle went there for a couple of years. But that was, oh. Well, I was in high school when we went up there and had, we would go up to the college like for President's Day, you know. They'd have a program and we'd all march up to the school, to the college. And we used the gym for, the college gym sometimes for parties and things, but
What kind of parties would you have in for high school?
oh, well, it was a no-no to dance, you know, so we tried it, but had a Victrola or an old phonograph or something, not much.
You weren't allowed to dance?
Well, you weren't supposed to.
Is that what the church said or the town said, or?
I think it was mostly the old people. And the church, I remember, we were confirmed on July the 8th in 1934. But anyhow, the pastor that was going to be confirming us told us that if he heard that any of us had gone to the dance on July 4th, he wouldn't confirm us. Of course, we all went. We watched. We didn't dance, but we got confirmed too. Yeah,
So-
that was
So what were you allowed to do for fun then,
not
as a
much.
kid? Would you go? Was there a bowling alley to go to, or a pool
Yeah, but that
hall?
was only after we were older. Yeah, pool halls, of course, we weren't allowed in there. But we had a bowling alley, and it would cost 10 cents a game to bowl. That was kind of fun, but not very exciting.
Would you go to people's houses or meet
Oh,
somewhere
yeah.
to eat?
Oh, sure. We often had, and in the summer we had a lot of picnics. In fact, sometimes we'd pack up a sandwich, and on Easter Monday when the weather was nice, we would walk out on the railroad tracks a couple of miles out of town and eat our usually egg sandwiches. and, but we had a good time.
In the town you grew up in, do you know about how many different churches there were in town?
Mm-hmm. There was the main one, the big one was a Lutheran, and then there was an evangelical and a Baptist and a Reformed.
How did they get along with each other?
Fine.
There wasn't any tension between them.
Hmm.
And was everybody in town? They were all German Russian, and the one Jewish
Pretty
family?
much, yeah. And the Russian family, Kolpakovs, yeah. Yeah, they were all pretty much German Russian that I can recall, anyhow.
How important was religion during your childhood?
Oh, Sunday school every Sunday and church afterwards, and very.
How long was Sunday school?
An hour. Hmm.
And then how long would the church service be?
An hour.
Okay.
Hmm.
Was it?
And we had German services at 11 o'clock and English services at 9. And I had to be confirmed, and all of us that could speak German had to be confirmed in German. The pastor wouldn't confirm you. But the kids that didn't speak German, they were fine. They got confirmed in English and probably remember a lot more of it than I do, in the German anyhow.
Did you learn how to read German, or could you just speak it?
I could do some reading, yeah. I couldn't read the script, but I could read the print. Hmm.
Would your books for church for Sunday school, would those have been in English or German?
Both. They had both the English and the German verses, yeah.
Okay.
And what I thought was so funny, we had a Norwegian home ec teacher, and they belonged to our church. In fact, her older son would have graduated with me, but he died of typhoid fever when he was a freshman. Anyhow, she would come to church, and I would just be amazed because she could read the German printing, you know. And then we asked her about it one time, and she said, well, it's very much like Norwegian, you know, the printing. So I don't know, but
She knew it was.
yeah,
Wow.
she lost both her sons in World War II. Well, she had 3 sons. Harold died when he was a freshman, yeah.
Were there a lot of kids? Did a lot of people lose brothers, sisters,
Oh,
kids?
yes, Eureka. Our church alone, we went through our church directory one time, Emil and I. There were a lot of them just from our church, yeah.
Would you say there was a lasting impact of World War II in the
Oh,
community
I'm
and on
sure.
you?
They have a beautiful monument of all the veterans of all the wars, like World War I, World War II, and Korean War, and down by the lake. It's really nice.
Do you think World War II had a larger impact than the Korean War?
Oh, I think so. It was more widespread, yeah. Not too many. Well, there were some that were in the Korean War, but not too many.
We'll talk about religion a little more. Did you prefer to go to the German service or the English service?
Oh, we went to the English, of course, yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Did that create a problem with some of the older people in town? Did they?
Not really. They went at 11 and we went at 9, so no problem.
Everybody was happy.
Right.
Was Sunday treated differently than the other days of the week?
Oh, yes. Like I said, you went to Sunday school and church, and you didn't do any menial labor at all. Although my mom used to embroider, and then when my grandpa would walk into the room, she'd sit on her embroidery hoop and trying to hide it, yeah.
Could you kids go play?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just no work on.
No work, yeah. We were allowed to play cards in the basement. Like, we played rummy and, hearts. Something, it was a kid's game called Pig, and you'd put the card, when you had a card of some kind, you'd put it up to your nose, you know, and then everybody would see that you had that card. And I don't remember. I just remember it was a fun game.
To the kids, it was okay if you did
Mm-hmm.
different things.
Yeah, right.
Was confirmation an important event for your family?
Oh, my, yes, yeah.
How did you guys celebrate it?
Well, of course, we had church morning and afternoon, and you always had a lot of company.
Would your mom and or your grandmother cook special meals for
Mm-hmm. Well, big meals anyhow. I don't think there was anything special. Usually chicken, I suppose that was a main meat dish usually. But
How did you guys celebrate Christmas and Christmas Eve?
church on Christmas Eve, oh yes, that was a big deal. In fact, the day of Christmas Eve, you didn't even do much work. You just spent all the time getting ready for church and the Christmas program, of course. And then my aunt and uncle lived right next door. We always spent Christmases together, one year at our house and one year at their house. And the same thing with Thanksgiving.
Be a big family gathering.
Yeah. Well, the family wasn't very big. I mean, well, my uncle had 3 kids, and then we, of course, had the 4. But it was fun. I remember one Christmas Eve, my oldest cousin next door, she was such a tomboy, and my brothers got trucks at Christmas time, and on Christmas Eve when we opened the gifts, Marcella just had a real hissy fit. My uncle had to go get the hardware store man to open the hardware store so he could buy a truck for her. She was such a tomboy.
Did you guys always get a gift at Christmas?
One. Mm-hmm.
Even during the hard times of the 30s?
Oh yeah, there was always something. Maybe it wasn't very much, but we always got a gift.
Would it always be like a doll or a toy, something like that?
Yeah, and one year I got a crocheted purse with a zipper on it, a flat purse. I can still remember that. And yeah, it was nothing that was very expensive, of course, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you guys have a Santa Claus or anything that would come visiting?
Oh, our neighbor. She was my godmother, and we called her Aunt. And she would dress, scare the heck out of us. I knew who she was, and still she scared me to death. But, oh yeah, she came every Christmas.
Why did she scare you to death?
Oh, that awful costume she wore. It wasn't the Santa Claus costume, just she wore a big furry coat. And I don't remember what she had on her head, but she must have had something on her face because we didn't recognize her. But I knew who she was anyhow. But
how would you guys celebrate Easter?
oh, you always made your Easter baskets, and many times we had nice green grass, so we would fill the baskets with grass, and then, of course, we dyed the eggs, and, of course, we didn't. That was a surprise on Easter morning.
Would you go hunting for all the eggs?
When my dad lived, I remember we had a wood pile in the backyards, and he would hide Easter eggs back there, and I remember finding eggs under the wood pile. But we never hid any at home where I grew up. But I can remember my mom would dye the eggs after we were all in bed, late at night. And this one particular time, my brother sneaked down she did it in the basement, sneaked down the stairway and peeked around the corner and saw that she was dyeing eggs, so that took the fun out of that for them. But
they discovered it.
Yeah, they discovered it.
Did the town have a 4th of July celebration?
Oh, yeah. Usually a big one, yeah. Mm-hmm.
What would the town do?
Oh, parades, and we were Girl Scouts, and we always marched in the parade. And this one particular time, we wore international costumes, and I wore the French Girl Scout costume, and it was all wool, and it was so hot. I'll never forget that. We marched in the parade, and then on Memorial Day, we would march out to the cemetery, too. We'd get a ride back in a truck, but going out was on your own 2 feet.
Wow. Were there any kind of firecrackers or fireworks?
Oh, yeah, we always had fireworks down by the lake, yeah. And I can remember firecrackers early in the morning on the 4th. You could hear them all over town, At that time, it wasn't illegal yet. Mm-hmm.
Did you light firecrackers?
Nope.
Would you get maybe money on the 4th of July to go spend
Oh,
around
yeah.
town?
Oh, yeah. Like maybe 25 cents. That went a long ways.
Do you remember what you would get?
Oh, usually there was a soda a fountain soda that was called Green River. It was kind of lime flavored, and you could get a glass of that for a nickel. And of course, all candy bars were a nickel, and
That would be your 25 cents.
went a long ways, yeah. Oh, yeah, right.
Did your family celebrate birthdays?
Oh, not really with parties or anything. You always had a cake or something, but
Would there be a gift?
usually a little something, not much. No,
Yeah, would it be candy or would you get another little toy
no,
or
not candy. I got a lot of books, kids' books, small ones, yeah.
were there any other holidays that you remember celebrating?
Hmm. I can't think of any. Of course, there was always Good Friday. You didn't do anything. And my grandmother didn't even eat on Good Fridays. She fasted all day.
Did you want to do anything the entire day?
Hmm? Hmm?
Would did you observe any other days around Easter?
Mm. Mm. Not really, just that we'd have church or.
Let's talk about high school a little more. In high school, did you have an idea of what you wanted to be when you finished high school?
I wanted to be a nurse, yeah, but I couldn't stand to see blood. And of course, we didn't have the money to go to school either. Nowadays, you could have borrowed it, but at that time, you couldn't borrow money to go to school.
What made you want to be a nurse?
I don't know, I just wanted to be a nurse.
What was the transition like for you from grade school to high school?
Oh, the worst part was not having after I was out of high school, not having Christmas vacations. After I was working, you worked those holidays. You didn't, that bothered me.
So you didn't have to have a full-time or a part-time job during high school?
Mm-hmm.
How big of a school was the high school?
Pupil size or?
Yeah, but how many students do you know?
Oh, there must have been a couple of hundred of us. We had all 12 grades in the whole school system.
Were they all in one building?
Well, no, we built a new high school in, well, what year was it? I'm not even sure. I started my freshman year in the new high school. And I graduated in 38. Wow. So,
About 34
but
they'd have built there.
yes, yeah, right. And then we had the big old square school with a bell on top and a big fire escape on the side, that you slid down.
Oh, wow. Was the school brick-sided?
Brick.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Were there more males or females in school? Or was it about even?
I think it was pretty even, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did a lot of the people you started high school with finish high school?
Most of them did. Quite a few moved away before the war broke out. They moved out west or to Michigan or someplace where there were jobs.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite or a memorable moment from high school?
Hmm.
Or a couple?
Gosh, nothing that I can remember. That's so long ago.
Were you active in any social clubs in school?
In drama, but I started playing a French horn, but it didn't go over very well with me, so I was not musically inclined, I guess.
But you liked drama?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the plays that you used to
Oh,
put on?
Gosh, I have some pictures. There were a couple of mysteries. Oh, I don't remember. Anyhow, there was an all-school play, and then there was a junior play and a senior play, and
Were they musicals or just
no,
plays?
just plays, yeah.
Okay.
No musicals.
Do you remember how a student would get disciplined if they stepped out of line in high school?
When I was in high school, yeah, we had a our superintendent was not very tall, and he limped. His nickname was Step and a Half, which wasn't very nice. But anyhow, a couple of these boys, they would act up, you know, and this one particular time he came in and he grabbed one of the big basketball players by the scruff of the neck and threw him across the assembly floor, which you wouldn't dare do nowadays, but the kid toned down after a while. He always was a bully, so.
Wow.
But that's all I can do. Oh, and then another time, the whole class was disciplined. We were seniors and wanted to go on skip day, and of course our superintendent, he was a real Berlin German, hot-tempered, but he wouldn't allow us to go. So one of the kids had a car, so we went after school, you know, went to a neighboring town they were having a carnival, and we called it our skip day. Anyhow, when we came back, we were not considered seniors anymore. We had no more senior privileges for the rest of the year, and so but we had a good time at the carnival.
You went after school to this and still
After
got
4
in
o'clock.
trouble?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Wow.
Oh, yes.
Wow. Were sports a big deal when you were in
Not
school?
like they are now, no. No, but basketball was. And then we did have a football team, but they never played very many games. But basketball, we had a good basketball team, yeah.
Did girls have any kind of activities along the lines of sports that
Well,
they could do?
we played volleyball in the gym, you know, and that's about it. Oh, well, in the spring we played softball, but we were not really a team or anything.
You said you played volleyball. Do you remember the rules to volleyball?
Heavens, no, I know you knocked the ball off of your fist.
Were you allowed to jump for the ball?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And softball, was it played similar to how we play softball now, or were there different
I
rules?
think we had our own rules, yeah. We just batted the ball around, yeah.
It wasn't an organized.
No,
Super fun.
no.
Did the school have pep rallies?
Yeah, just before a big basketball game, yeah.
What would you do at the pep rally?
Just cheer. I mean, the cheerleaders would lead us in different cheers, and
You weren't a cheerleader?
no,
Did you not? Did you want to be a cheerleader?
not really. No, not really.
Did your family encourage you at all to try to go on to college? Or did you know that?
Well, we knew there was no money, so yeah, right.
So what did you do after high school?
I went to work at the drugstore, and I worked there for 6 years. In fact, I started after school when I was still in high school. Had a part-time job, yeah.
How did you later come to meet your husband?
Well, it was on the 4th of July, and the neighboring town was having a celebration. That's where we really met, but the first time I saw him was during the Eureka Golden Jubilee. He was the instructor, a band instructor at Venturia. And of course, how kids are, I'm going to have this one. This is going to be mine, you know. A guy with a white suit and a white band cap. And then it was funny, then the next summer I met him over at a little town, Harriet, South Dakota. That's where we met, yeah.
And did he ask you out on a date after that?
Not for a
or-
couple of years, Of course,
what-
I was too young. I was quite a bit younger, yeah.
How much older than you is he?
He was 11 years older than I.
Wow. What did your family, what did your mom think of
My
that?
mom thought it was great, but my aunt and uncle thought it was terrible.
So how long did you, or when did you start actually dating and getting to the
Oh,
point
I
that,
was through high school already.
okay. When did you guys get married?
During the war in 1944, 43, 43.
What was your wedding ceremony like?
Well, it was in um, Lutheran Social Service Center in Augusta, Georgia. Yeah. So
Did you have a wedding reception, or
no, we just went out for dinner with our attendants, and
did you not want a big wedding, or was it because it was wartime?
well, it was wartime. Yeah. No.
So you weren't probably able to have.
No, I don't think we would have had a big wedding anyhow.
Were you able to take a honeymoon at all?
3 days, and then I had to come home, and Art was. They went on maneuvers, so I came home, and
Where did you guys live after you got married?
well, we lived here in Lair, of course. During the war, we lived in Augusta, Georgia, and after the war, we lived in Fort Worth for a while. Fort Worth. Art went to school down there, and well, that's about it. Then we lived here in Lair.
Looking back at your childhood, what do you think is the most stressful experience you had?
I think probably when my dad died. I was 5 years old, but I have good memories of that now.
What do you think was the most adventurous thing you did?
Well, when I went to Augusta, Georgia to see Art before we were married down there. And I went all by myself on the train.
How long of a train ride was that?
Oh, let's see, 2 days.
You just went to visit and get married? Did you know you were going down there to get married? Or?
No, I didn't. I had no intentions we were going to get married, but we did.
How long were you there visiting?
About 2 weeks.
What is your happiest childhood memory?
Oh my. Goodness, I can't think of anything that was really. There was nothing really unhappy, but nothing that stood out.
Yeah.
I know I used to love to go out on the farm to visit my cousins, but this one cousin, aunt and uncle had a goat, a billy goat, and that darn thing, every time he saw me come out of the door, he was right there waiting for me, scared to death of him.
Did you go out to visit him often on the farm?
Oh, a couple of times a year, maybe.
Was it just a day trip to go visit
Yeah.
him?
Well, sometimes it was a couple of days that we stayed overnight, yeah.
Would you ever have to help him with the farm chores?
Nope,
He's going to play around on the farm.
we just played right.
That's the way to visit farms.
And rubbered in on the telephone, party lines. You could hear everything that went on in the neighborhood.
That was at their farm? Or was this at your house as
No,
well?
at their farm, no, huh? No, we didn't have a party line.
Why do you think it's important to share your life story?
Gee, I don't know. I never really had any hardships that were you could consider hardships. And like kids nowadays, they have everything. They have it made. They get cars before they can see over the steering wheel, and
Yeah. They often do. Do you have any other thoughts, observations, or memories that you still would like to share?
Mm. Uh, I know in the summer, excuse me, we lived in town and my aunts and uncles lived on the farm, and anyhow, they would bring in a big basket full of field corn, and we would, husk it. And I remember us kids, there were four of us, I think, sitting on a hammock eating corn on the cob. My mother would cook a big kettle full and just leave it sitting on the counter or on the table. So if you wanted some corn, it was field corn, I'm sure. I don't think it was sweet corn, but we thought it was great.
Did you put butter and salt on it like we do now, or did you just eat it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Salt especially. My mom didn't like butter. She never ate butter. But then we ate this outdoors, so it was mostly just plain, I think, even without salt, yeah.
Do you have any other memories that you recall?
Some that weren't very nice, yeah.
Do you want to share those or not?
Well, I was a nasty kid, I guess. When my cousins would come in from the farm, and then friends from town would come to play, and then I either wouldn't play with one or the other. It was not good.
Do you have any others that you recall that you want to share?
I don't think so. I think I've shared too much already.
No, not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Oh,
It's
you're
been a
welcome.
great interview. You did fine, and didn't even seem nervous in front of the camera.
Really?